Right.
I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is, this House do now adjourn. Dr. Rupert Huck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was the sitar-loving George Harrison who sang that Bangladesh sure looks like a mess. He made the observation in 1971, soon after the country's formation. But it applies again after August the 5th, when momentous events have happened in that country. And no one saw it coming, but the previous Prime Minister, it looked so entrenched, Sheikh Hasina, was overthrown. And within days, we had her replacement with Professor Muhammad Yunus, Nobel Prize winner for his concept of microfinance. Bangladesh's founding, and this didn't happen without bloodshed. Actually, hundreds of students were killed in the struggle for the new Bangladesh 2.0, as people have called it. Thousands of them were injured. Bangladesh's founding constitution, it's only a young country, stressed democracy, secularism and socialism. But in recent years, it's become synonymous with corruption, authoritarianism and repression. And there were kind of echoes of Saddam Hussein's fall when we saw TV pictures of statues of the first ever leader, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, toppled, and effigies of him burned, pictures smashed from the capital city Dhaka to Tower Hamlets. And all because of his daughter, this ex-PM Sheikh Hasina, who'd ruled in two bursts for a large percentage of that country's existence. And it was her, actually, who ensured omnipresent pictures of her dad across the nation. And for me, it sort of had echoes of Tiananmen Square in 1990, although in this case, the students won. And it may be a fledgling interim government, but, you know, I feel that it has very good intentions. We should congratulate them. Two people are trying to give way. I'll give way to the new chair of the Defence Committee.
I thank my honourable member, and indeed I thank her for securing this adjournment about democracy in Bangladesh. And after the recent upheaval, many of my Slough constituents, but also people across the globe, are extremely concerned about not just democracy, but also the rights of minorities. There have been many attacks, in particular on the Hindu minority community. Would you agree with me that it is incumbent upon the new administration to safeguard the rights of all minorities within Bangladesh?
My honourable friend always makes an excellent point. And when we're talking about minorities, Hindus, Buddhists, there are various minorities. It is interesting to look at who is propagating these stories, though, because there have also been pictures of the madrasas, the sort of in their tupis, the students, the devout Muslim ones, defending Hindu homes. Yes. So I think BBC Verify has showed that some of these attacks have been on people associated with the previous regime. So sometimes these things are a bit amplified by people with agendas, but he makes a great point. And I give way to Jim Shannon.
Jim Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I commend the Honourable Lady for Ealing Central and acting for bringing this forward? The Honourable Lady is absolutely right to highlight that issue. Does the Honourable Lady not agree that democracy means protection of human rights and religious freedom? And I declare an interest as chair of the APPG for freedom of religious belief. We stand up for those with Christian faith, those with other faith and those with no faith. And the right for religious freedom and the right to practice faith or no faith, and that there can never be any true democracy in Bangladesh until a government and a system is in place which does not penalise people based on how they worship or where they worship, but it offers protection to have differences. That's what society should be like.
To Rupert Huck.
I totally agree with him, the Honourable Member for Strangford. And the UK has a unique historic role in the sort of colonial histories that we have as head of the Commonwealth on these matters. So he does great work on the APPG. We should be vigilant on all these things. Yeah, I will.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Member for giving way, and I congratulate her on securing this important debate. On the UK's role, is she aware that in May this year, the previous UK government signed a deal with the now deposed Bangladeshi government about the fast-tracking the deportation of Bangladeshi asylum seekers, presumably including those seeking political asylum, given that Bangladesh was deemed supposedly a safe country? And does she agree with me that something clearly has been revealed to be wrong here with both the deportation policy itself and the UK's foreign policy objectives?
Dr. Rupa Hutt.
I'm grateful to her for that intervention. I have checked, and apparently some of those MOUs, they're coming one by the new government to see if they do carry over or not. But she makes an excellent point about, let's have a reset. We have a fresh government in this country, a fresh government there. I think it's time to look at these things through new eyes. And back in the summer, in fact, it was the same time as we saw race riots in this country. There was sort of footage of jubilant Bangladeshis marching through the streets of her borough, Tower Hamlets, and it confused many people. But this was actually in happiness. These weren't angry ethnic mobs. There is a big global diaspora, 70,000 in this country, including myself, across Europe. They're to be seen in some of these Middle Eastern Emirati states. They have supplied sort of cheap labour to build things like World Cup stadiums in Qatar. So it's a place of export of people.
Matt Rodder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and she's making an excellent speech about a very important issue. Could I commend the work of the Bangladeshi community in Reading, who work incredibly hard in our town and are very visible in a whole series of professions and different business activities. And may I also thank and commend her for her work in securing this debate and in raising these very important matters about the future of Bangladesh. And of course, across the House, I think we all share concerns about this wonderful country and we wish it the best in its new leadership.
Dr. Rupa Hutt.
He is so right there. I didn't see any demos in Reading, but I do know that in sort of all sorts of European capitals, Paris, Rome, Manchester, Trafalgar Square, there were solidarity protests when these things went on, so the diaspora has been active. And look, I'm a London-born Bangladeshi. I kind of knew about that country through my parents telling me it's this paradise of coconut trees and those kind of things. I only went as a teenager. And then more recently, as an adult and as an MP, I've sort of noticed a slightly more sinister side to it. Things like enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, and every human rights organisation, Amnesty, etc., has condemned these. So I actually tried to keep out of this subject. I don't have a very Bangladeshi electorate, but I was jolted when in 2018 the family of Shahidul Alam, a photographer who was taking pictures of an earlier student protest, was sort of banged up and tortured. So then I kind of had to get involved. And then I was there as recently as May with the excellent APPG on global sexual and reproductive health rights, just reconstituted today. They sent me there to a UNDP conference. And again, I kind of realised I'm in a one-party police state. It's not quite right. So these human rights crackdowns, they come across my inbox as one of the diaspora. They reached fever pitch this July when these hundreds of people, brave students, gave their lives in a struggle. And back before we broke for recess, I had a panel discussion. Some of the panellists included Toby Cadman, a barrister who's defended people from the Jamaat party that was banned by the previous regime. They've just been unbanned. We had the head of Amnesty UK. And it was so oversubscribed. We did it in the Grand Committee Room of Westminster. They had to turn people away. Such is the thirst for information on this. And the Honourable Member for Leicester South was there. I see him in his place. I think possibly his defeat of Jonathan Ashworth may have been something to do with some comments on Bangladesh. Anyway, let's not speculate too much. Yes, I will.
Adam.
I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for giving way. Would she agree with me the positive contribution that the Bangladeshi community has made to our country to make it as it is today? And I'd like to take this opportunity to pay homage to the Bangladeshi community of Leicester South, who's hard-working, entrepreneurial, philanthropic, and their commitment to using the political system to improve the community has made my city as great as it is today. But would you also agree with me that the recent riots that we saw in Southport after the devastating attack and the killing of 3 innocent people really emphasises how important it is that we do not single out a single community because that can have devastating effects. And would she agree with me that both sides of the House should be much more responsible in the language that they use, to ensure community cohesion ensues.
To Rupa
I
Hutt.
completely endorse what he's saying. We do need to temper our language and be careful. We need to recognise, every member in this house has got a curry house in their constituency. That will not be an Indian restaurant, it'll be Bangladeshis who run that. So an enormous contribution that has been made to our society, and the things we saw this summer, the misinformation, again, referred to it in my honourable friend's answer. We should stamp on those sort of things. The Bangladeshi students, again, the courage that they showed, these were university students, not just the elitist ones from the capital city, it happened all over the country, public and private universities, boys and girls. And their demands were initially sort of against corruption, but it then grew to wider pro-democracy concerns and the overthrow of the Prime Minister, so far so predictable. Then in the biggest plot twist, Madam Deputy Speaker, since Bobby Ewing in the shower, when all these tensions were coming to a head, suddenly we heard she'd scarpered the previous Prime Minister, helicoptered out, a regime that looked so entrenched that would last forever, suddenly collapsed like a pack of cards. The elections of January, we hear 40% of the globe going to the polls this year. January, there was an election in Bangladesh, although there weren't any other real candidates in it. That was declared null and void. So we now have this caretaker government that's there to oversee fresh elections. We don't know when those will be exactly. Yeah, I will.
Can I thank the honourable member for giving way and for tabling this debate, a very important debate. The honourable member knows that in the city of Birmingham we have an extremely sizable community which has Bangladeshi heritage, and like my honourable member for Leicester South, the Bangladeshi community in the curry houses contributes some £4 billion per annum to the taxman. And will the honourable member agree with me, the recent disorder and the killing of students in Bangladesh is something that impacted the Bangladeshi community, heritage community here in the UK, especially when we had a lockdown of all telecoms? And does the honourable member agree that the next step must be a democratically elected government, and that must be expedited with potentially international observers to make sure that it's free and fair, so that the loss of those lives, of those students, hundreds of students, is not lost in vain?
Dr. Rupa Hutt.
I do agree. And again, our loved ones were worried we didn't know what was going on, because this is a country that at will can shut off the internet so people cannot communicate with the outside world or even with each other, phone signals. I think there was a Digital Information Act that was a bit sinister, stopping all freedom of speech, thought, expression, assembly, those kind of things. So yes, we must rebuild. And I have a section. Madam Deputy Speaker, is the knife at past still? Or do we... Oh, heck. Right. Okay. Right. Yeah, he makes a great point. The sight of Muhammad Yunus, who until recently the previous regime had been trying to lock up, and he's been a Simpsons character, actually, when Lisa discovered his microfinance loans to women, small loans to women, was a kind of baffling thing to see. But reassuring for many, because he's globally recognised. Amongst his friends are the Obamas, the Clintons. 197 world leaders have signed a memorandum to sort of welcome him to power. So this is the man tough. He's got the in tray from hell, hasn't he? But, big job to do, a big repair job of democracy for all these things. And he was here in March. My honourable friend for Bethnal Green and Bow organised a meeting with the APPG she headed then. And such a modest man, he had 200 different court cases against him. Didn't even go on about that, had to be teased out of him by Baroness Helena Kennedy, who I think was chairing on that day. He's known as banker to the poor. So nobody saw this coming. And it is a country of contradictions. 175 million people in a landmass the size of England and Wales, and beset by natural disasters. So at the moment, worst floods in 30 years. Youth unemployment sky high, which is partly an explanation for the protests. Yes, I will give way.
Thank you and congratulate her on getting this debate. Would she agree with me that there is also a geographical, geopolitical issue surrounding all the changes in Bangladesh at the moment. Hitherto, Bangladesh has adopted a credible, non-aligned position, supported the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and tried to basically be a promoter of peace within the region. I don't know any more than she does what the outcome of all this is going to be, but would she agree with me? The important thing is that Bangladesh remains independent and not aligned to any other bloc which might end up creating further problems of a Cold War within Southeast Asia.
Before the Honourable Lady concludes her speech, I'd like to remind members interventions should be short. I know you've all just had a masterclass in very long interventions. However, I'm sure that Dr. Rupa Huq is about to conclude her remarks, so the Minister has an opportunity.
Okay, well, there was plenty more to say, but look, what I would say is we need a fresh start, a reset, exactly as he says, neither in Washington nor Moscow. He's familiar with that slogan, as we used to be. So I would say that, we need less gerontocracy. Eunice is 84, but he's very, very sharp. The one he overthrew is 76, Khalid Azir, the opposition rival, is 78. So I've got some questions, actually, for the Minister. So, as I say, there's a big job. I think we should, with our unique role in all this, offer support. So, redrafting the Constitution, apparently that's being amended. Could we lend expertise there? We know we have... We've constructed the European Convention of Human Rights. British lawyers have good form on this, so could we lend some support there? And also capacity building to sort of cleanse all sorts of institutions of party people. They were in the pocket of the last regime. And Hendon Police Training College, renowned all over the world. Maybe we can rebuild the police, because apparently, there's been a bit of a vacuum there recently. And also the stormtrooper-like Rapid Action Battalion Force. They should be disbanded. The death penalty should be gone. And then maybe something about climate finance, because we know that countries in the global south are at the brunt of that. We're in the run-up to COP29. So these things don't even have to cost anything. If we put a levy, polluter pays on some of these countries. And then the last thing I would advocate, really, is that we need to recover some of those assets that apparently... So a lot of the Right Honourable Gentleman mentioned foreign governments' interference. When I last went there, I saw Chinese power plants, Russian, I can't remember what they all were, flyovers, lots of things. Apparently, in the process, money was looted and plundered. That belongs to the Bangladeshi people. We need asset tracing to remove those. So I will conclude. I understand that Professor Yunus is coming to the UN General Assembly. It'd be great if HMG can warmly welcome him there. I don't know if it would be my honourable friend or the PM or whoever. And, we're talking about Bangladesh 2.0 and human rights. And when Gandhi was asked, what do you think of Western civilization, he famously said, I think it would be a good idea. Let's make sure that democracy in Bangladesh and human rights is not just a good idea, but a given. People are talking about this as a second revolution. Let's rebuild this Bangladesh 2.0 so that human rights and democracy are given. I look forward to hearing what the Minister says.
Catherine West.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm so grateful to my honourable friend, the member for Ealing Central and Acton, for securing this debate, and I commend the commitment she's shown to Bangladesh over many years. And as we're aware in this House, Madam Deputy Speaker, adjournment debates are usually quite a lonely affair. So it's actually fantastic to have had contributions from the member for Strangford, the member for Reading, Poplar and Limehouse, and of course my colleague, the Minister for Bethnal Green and Stepney, who's staying in here for the debate following her earlier interest in a ministerial matter, but because it's such an important debate, remaining in here on the front bench. Leicester South, Birmingham, Perry Barr, Islington North, all the great friends of Bangladesh who I know are all very active in the all-party group as well. And the UK and Bangladesh share a historic relationship with a long-standing economic and trading ties built from a strong development partnership, and we're both valuable members of the Commonwealth family. Our long-standing relationship strengthened by our people-to-people ties with over 650,000 people of Bangladesh heritage living here in the UK, making a significant and highly valued contribution to the country and our relationship, which was given mention earlier on in the debate. And the UK was among the first to recognise Bangladesh after it gained independence in 1971. supporting the people of Bangladesh since then. We want to see a peaceful and democratic future for the people of Bangladesh. Democracy, human rights, an independent judiciary and good governance are vital foundations for long-term growth and prosperity, and in her speech the member has already outlined some of her ideas as to how that can be built in the coming months. The UK is therefore committed to bolstering democracy and human rights in Bangladesh through our sustained support to leaders of civil society, defence of media freedom and championing youth empowerment. We, like many in the international community, expressed concerns about the elections in Bangladesh in January of this year, because democratic elections depend on credible, open and fair competition. Respect for human rights, rule of law and due process are essential elements, and these standards sadly were not consistently met during the election period in Bangladesh and were followed by incidents of violent repression. During the recent protests, we were deeply saddened by the loss of life and injury caused, and there are credible reports of the police using tear gas, stun grenades and live rounds. The United Nations reports that 32 children were among those killed, and children were also among those detained during the protests. The violence reportedly left more than 600 people dead and thousands injured and detained. The former Bangladesh government severely restricted access to the internet, mobile services and landlines. These services were only fully restored after 10 days. We raised our concerns about the communications disruption in Bangladesh and the wide-scale impact it had, including to British nationals in country. We were clear that access to communications must be maintained and not used as a tool to repress freedom of speech. In July, the Foreign Secretary and I issued statements urging an end to the violence and loss of life. We called for all sides to find ways to restore calm, including by establishing a pathway for constructive political dialogue. We're clear that peaceful protesters must never be subject to violence, and that the right to protest, peacefully assemble and express different political views are rights that must be protected. During those protests, I reinforced our concerns and messages about the situation in discussions with the Bangladesh High Commissioner to the UK. The UK called for a full and independent UN-led investigation into the events and is supporting its independent fact-finding mission to identify human rights violations. We welcomed the appointment of the interim government in Bangladesh, led by Chief Advisor Professor Muhammad Yunus, in August. The Foreign Secretary made clear in his statement last month that the people of Bangladesh deserve a peaceful, inclusive, democratic future. The interim government in Bangladesh has committed to restoring peace and order, ensuring accountability and promoting national reconciliation. It has the UK's full support on these objectives. The British High Commissioner in Bangladesh, Sarah Cook, to whom we all owe a debt of gratitude, met Professor Yunus, the Chief Advisor, and other key members of the interim government, including the Advisor for Foreign Affairs of the interim government in August. She and the members of the High Commission in Dhaka continue to engage with the interim government on key priorities, and she will have heard the comments of the member for Ealing and Acton. She and the members of the British High Commission are actively supporting this democratic process, including through the Bangladesh Collaborative, Accountable and Peaceful Politics Programme, the BCAPP, and we work with civil society, youth, political parties and other international partners to encourage democratic participation, civil space and accountable governance. The UK's support to Bangladesh reflects other challenges the country faces, including the impacts of climate change and humanitarian issues, and my deepest sympathy is with the people of Bangladesh in all of its regions as the nation faces the effects of the recent devastating floods. My thoughts are with all those affected, and we have responded to the recent flooding with £483,000 of humanitarian assistance, which is, of course, on top of our long-standing support under the Overseas Development Aid projects. The UK government is also committed to supporting the Rohingya refugees through humanitarian support, and we are very aware that at this moment of stress for Bangladesh, this is a particularly precious duty which they're carrying out on behalf of the international community. As a leading donor to the Rohingya refugee response, we're providing humanitarian aid including food provision, clean water, healthcare and protection services. Over £391 million has been provided by the UK since 2017. Because the current conditions in Myanmar are not conducive to the safe return of the Rohingya refugees, we're working with the interim government in Bangladesh on continued support to those refugees. To conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, as a long-standing champion of democracy and as a friend and partner of Bangladesh, the UK will support the country's interim government in its work to restore peace and order, ensure accountability and promote national reconciliation. We will work with Chief Advisor Professor Yunus and his interim government as they chart a peaceful transition to an inclusive, prosperous and democratic future for Bangladesh. And as a part of this regular dialogue, the UK will continue to raise concerns over the protection of human rights and freedom of expression. We will urge the government of Bangladesh to ensure safety and security inside Rohingya refugee camps, and we will reiterate that peaceful protesters must never be subject to violence. As many of our diaspora communities watch this important debate, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Ealing Central and Acton, for her relentless support for Bangladesh, for its people, and could I thank her for bringing this debate here this afternoon. Thank you.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as are of that opinion say aye. The ayes have it. Order, order.